Okay, let's call this meeting to order, the Tulloch Truckee Sanitation Agency for August 14th, 2019 at 9 a.m. Director Cox, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Let's all rise. Jay, will you help us with the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Roll call. Okay, let's let the record reflect that Director Wilkins is not here and he will be in attendance shortly thereafter. And so the full board, the rest of the board is here and present. Let's go to public comment. Any person wishing to address the board on items not listed elsewhere on the agenda may do so at this time. Okay, hearing no public comment, I'll close the public comment and let's go to professional achievements and awards. Vicki Lafano.
Good morning, President Lewis and directors. Just wanted to acknowledge a couple of employees for their achievements, promotions, and anniversaries. First, and if you could please stand just so that the board can acknowledge you. I see you smiling already, Troy. So Troy Kilgore. Troy received his wastewater treatment plant operator grade 3 certification, and he and he therefore received a promotion to wastewater treatment plant operator 2. So great job, Troy. One more time. Paul Schaus. Paul received his electrical instrumentation grade 4 certification. This was actually a requirement of his position when he was hired, and he had a certain time frame to achieve that within, and he has done that. So congratulations, Paul. And then we have one work anniversary, which is Jay Parker, Engineering Department Manager. And Jay is celebrating 15 years here.
15 years? No way. No way, Jay.
All righty.
All right.
Well, thank you, Troy, Paul, and Jay, for your dedication to this, to the plant, and for your fine dedication here. Thank you. Okay, let's go on. Next item, we have consent calendar. Any person wishing to address items individually on the consent calendar may do so at this time. If not, do I have a motion for approval?
So move.
Second?
Okay, Director Crescent makes a motion, Director Cox seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, item 5, we have here discussion and update of classification and compensation study.
At the last board meeting, Bryce Consulting had provided some data to the board of directors. The board of directors picked the labor market based off a selected list of comparable agencies. Also, the last meeting, an ad hoc committee was appointed to review the data, make some suggestions, and potentially address some implementation issues. So we had a couple ad hoc meetings, and what I'll do is provide the ad hoc recommendations to the board of directors for your consideration. Also, at the direction of the ad hoc, we have been very transparent in keeping that information with staff, so I've also provided the information to staff. So in your board packet here, you see quite a few spreadsheets that was provided to staff. In our staff meeting we had yesterday, went over the recommendations, and I'll follow shortly by discussing those. There was an error on my part in explaining some of those, but that's been clarified. So with that point, what I'd like to do is have Shelley of Bryce Consulting please come to the front, and what I'll do is I'll go through the recommendations, and if there's any questions, if you could address those for me, please. She didn't bring anything because the direction was to wait for responses, and then she would have action afterwards. So recommendation from ad hoc was to amend the list of comparable agencies. As you recall, there were 2 lists that were discussed. One was the original consultant list, which we will call the Bryce list. The second list we will call staff list, where the board adopted the consideration of additional agencies that were put in there. At the ad hoc meeting, there was an additional a revision of 13 listed on item 1. There is an omission of the Truckee Sanitary District to that list. So what you have are City of Roseville, City of Sparks, Delta Diablo Sanitation District, El Dorado Irrigation District, Incline Village General Improvement District, Mammoth Community Water District, Napa Sanitation District, North Tahoe Public Utility District, South Tahoe Public Utility District, Squaw Valley Public Service District, Tahoe City Public Utility District, Truckee Donner Public Utility District, and as I stated, Truckee Sanitary District. The recommendation is to maintain the 75% labor market using this list of comparables. And the tables that you're seeing here are the data set points based on the list of comparables I just read, as well as maintaining the 75% recommendation of the 75% labor market. Other recommendations really apply to the implementation. It will sound confusing as I read them to you. I can address the questions the best I can. These are the general directions and recommendations. As to the actual implementation and the logistics of making it happen, that's something staff has to look into further if that's the direction the board wishes to proceed in. So the first would be the recommendation of 2 salary schedules, and we'll call them Schedule A and Schedule B. So in summary, Schedule A would be very similar to the current salary schedules that we have now, and it would really apply to the current employees, which would therefore allow them to maintain the and continue the step progression within their current classification salary range. So if you are in step 2 of a certain classification and there is a new proposed, well, there's another salary schedule that has a different salary, if you're in it, the ad hoc recommendation is that you finish your step progression to step 7. However, should an employee be promoted or have a change in classification, the recommendation is that they be moved to Schedule B. If an employee during that change in classification is moving to Schedule B, and it is a promotion, if their current salary is higher than the recommended salary on Schedule B, they could maintain that higher salary. On the other side, if it is a lower classification, meaning less responsibilities, less duties, if they have that change in classification, they would accept the lower salary in Schedule B. Schedule B would be a salary schedule as recommended by Bryce, which would be prepared by us, but would be using the recommendations of the study. And all new staff that come on board with the agency after implementation of the study would be subject to Schedule B. There's also a recommendation to salary and classification adjustments. In the study, it's potential that you're going to find staff that we have identified are below the recommended 75% labor mark. The recommendation is to bring those employees up to the 75% labor market. Also, for the adjustments, we do have staff that could be eligible for promotion, meaning they have a certification that could put them into the next step. So let's say if you are an operator 2, but you're actually are in possession of an operator 3 certificate, the recommendation is that we move them, pending approvals from the supervisors and the department managers, into the higher Operation 3 position within Salary Schedule A, therefore allowing them to maintain the progression of where they're at now. The fourth recommendation is recommended cost of living adjustments. So as we have 2 schedules, Schedule A and Schedule B, the idea is to merge the gap of the 2 together. So COLAs is recommended to be only applied to the Schedule B classifications. So the final recommendation is, in lieu of COLAs for the other individuals like in Schedule A, there's a recommendation for a pay for performance appraisal system. And that's a non-base pay compensation, and that applies to only those stepped out, meaning at the final step of their classification. And it would be a one-time lump sum performance merit-based pay increase of up to 5% of their current salary. So those are the recommendations provided by, recommended by the ad hoc. Management agrees with those. So the direction moving forward now is to have the board consider that and direct Shelley, Bryce Consulting, to implement or not implement the list of comparable agencies. And depending on that action, she would return next month with her report. The board would review it, accept it. Based on that action, staff and management would look at the data maybe meet with ad hoc one more time and see if there's any adjustments internally that we want to make, and then follow up with another meeting to adopt the job descriptions and a salary schedule.
Okay.
So the recommendation is that the board of directors take the recommendations as submitted by the ad hoc committee.
Okay, Director Cox.
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Under discussion here.
It's under discussion.
Yeah,
It was
Yeah,
more of
yeah,
a
sure.
directive to
Right.
Shelley.
right. Okay, let's have a discussion here. So, I'm looking at item 4 here as being critical as far as COLA to pay for performance. And I also don't want to see any of our employees fall behind as far as their social living based on not receiving that COLA. But you're going for pay for performance instead, is that correct? Up to 5%?
For those that are maxed out in their classification. So the idea of the COLAs is to, Schedule B is a signing labor market. So as the years continue, that COLA will maintain the labor market for those employees.
That fall, that are already at the high point, they would not be receiving those, correct?
No, so if you have someone in Schedule A who is maxed out and the
Right.
study identifies them as being over what the recommended 75% market is,
Correct.
they would remain in a Schedule A. They would not be receiving COLAs. However, what they would receive is the merit pay performance value 5% increase, only if they are maxed out, meaning they're on the 7th step of that classification. So if you're on the 2nd step, the next year, you would be subject typically to 5%, or I think in this case, 2.5 step raise between the next step. That's all you would be subject to. The 5% merit base does not apply until the end of that classification. And that applies to both Schedule A and Schedule B. So touch base again on the COLAs. The COLA is only to maintain the 75% labor market for Schedule B.
So once they receive that 7th step, then the COLA would not be in place, the 5% would be.
When anybody, regardless of schedule, reaches the 7th step or final step, they are subject to a 5% merit-based increase. The COLA only applies to Schedule B employees.
Okay.
So those that are in excess of the 75% labor market right now that are in Schedule A, they will not be receiving a COLA
Okay.
if they're in Schedule A. But again, the COLA is just to maintain the labor market. Because the idea is Schedule A stays in one position, Schedule B is slowly catching up through them, and then through time, they should become similar.
Okay. But the majority, where most of our employees already land in that 75%, correct?
Yeah, most of our majorities are in Schedule A,
Okay.
and most of them would be on the 7th step, correct?
Okay.
So they would be subject to a 5% merit increase,
Okay.
merit-based increase.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is the 5% every year, or is it 5% one time and that's it?
It is an annual 5%.
Director Tresson.
So at the last board meeting, the board made a recommendation for management and the consultant to, move forward based on the 75th percentile and the consultant's recommended comparators, and to form this ad hoc committee of Director Wilkins and myself. And during that meeting, there was no comments from staff, and, I understand staff's uncomfortable perhaps speaking in front of the board and in front of a camera, and LaRue met with staff, and there were comments afterwards, and we were apprised of those, and that factored into some of the recommendations here that are different than the simple recommendation we made last time in terms of some of the comparator agencies and some of these other implementation steps. So now we had the recommendations. LaRue, you said you met with staff to share these recommendations. And you've intentionally not agendized this item for adoption. Today, we're still kind of in the discussion and direction phase, with possibly coming back next board meeting with the actual salary schedule and adoption of the classification, the job descriptions, and the new salary
Schedule A and B. Is that right?
Yes, so the next board meeting, I was hoping to provide data, direction on a change in class, comparable list for Shelley, then she would run her numbers with that. She would return back with her study with her recommendations on it. And the intent is to accept that report at the next month's meeting.
So next month would be the one where we would have the actual, we'd adopt the job descriptions and the Schedule A, B salary schedules, along with an understanding on how we're gonna implement it for existing staff and new staff. But we're not adopting anything now. At this point, we're just discussing and basically giving you direction. Do you wanna move forward with this proposal, or, do we wanna move forward with something different than this?
Correct, so today we're looking for direction to Shelley, but all I'm expecting next month is just to have the report from Shelley.
Okay,
Once we accept that, we as an agency have to take the report in, take a look at it, come back the following
Okay.
month with salary recommendations, because we would have to have A and B, because she's not aware of what A and B is, her scope will not cover that. And we will
Okay.
also bring back the job descriptions. So the October meeting is when I'm anticipating that, if everything goes accordingly,
Okay.
we would have an action item to
Okay.
adopt the job descriptions, adopt the salary schedules, which would be essentially implementing the components of the study that we feel are applicable. So again,
Okay.
So this motion and second is moot point?
yeah,
At this point?
there's no motion, it's just really a report of the ad hoc, and then I would then be able to get a consensus provided to Shelley, and she will proceed with her report accordingly. And then that's why, when I opened up the first recommendation, that really applies to her, is really the list of comparable agencies. The implementation side is really our responsibility to address. But at the last meeting, the discussion was, the ad hoc was to look at the data and look at some implementation issues. That's why you have that data here.
Okay,
So when I was
LaRue-
asking for action, it was just really more of to me, to provide direction to Shelley Price.
So the recommendation, LaRue, that you made, that we accept the ad hoc committee's progress?
No, they're recommendations. So the first thing is you would provide feedback if you think that we should have an amended list of comparable agencies. So that would be the first direction I'd like to receive. Secondly, if you feel that the actions, recommendations on the implementation, meaning the salary schedules A and B, 2 salary schedules, changes and adjustments to salaries and classifications, the recommendations for application of COLA, and recommendations for pay for performance. And we can still have a discussion with that next month. But today, what I really need is to have a direction on, should we ask Shelley to amend her study to match the list of comparable agencies, or maintain the study as was submitted to us last month?
As far as member agencies to be included.
So it was the ad hoc's recommendation to modify the list of comparable agencies. We dropped one of the ones that was on the original list, Shelley, I think it was the city of Placerville, that just didn't seem like a good comp, and added a couple of the agencies with, treatment plants, Delta Diablo and Napa San, to the list. So that was our recommendation, and that's what we're bringing to the board.
Okay?
And then I think we went over these other, kind of the more implementation things in an effort to, come up with a system so staff, nobody was gonna see a reduction in salary. There were still opportunities for folks that are hired in their current position to grow within that position, and even without a COLA, if they're maxed out, to have merit-based, bonus opportunities for, revenue on their side with these 5% things. So it was all in all, that pretty much.
Okay, but basically, right now, we're discussing the amount, the agency list right here, correct? That's what you want approval from?
That's what I need direction from.
Okay.
Do we want to
Do we
go
all,
with the revised
or
list?
do we all agree with this, the new list here?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Like an
That was our
Okay,
recommendation. yeah.
okay, so you have consensus that the board go with this list of agencies.
Do you need a formal action on that?
I don't- I
Because
think-
in our last meeting, we took a motion and said to go with the other list, and we're now changing that.
There's no, the formal action will be when we,
Yeah.
next month, when it comes in.
Okay.
So as to the us, we have action on that to have the report proceed with the amended list here of parallel agencies. Regarding the other ones, these are the recommendations on the ad hoc. When she comes back next month with the final report, I will revisit these again. We'll do some research internally to see if we can proceed with this. But on the surface, would the board be in acceptance of the recommendations numbers 2 through 5? And again, we will have that opportunity to approve that at the October meeting.
And so at a broad level, what, you know, when the ad hoc committee was meeting, we met 2 or 3 times for 2 or 3 hours each with Shelley and LaRue on this. Spent a lot of time poring over it, really with, in my opinion, 2 goals in mind. One, establishing a salary schedule that had a, kind of a, that wasn't random, if you will. That was based on data and comparable agencies, comparable positions. It was attempting to be justifiable, in my opinion, to our public and taxpayers and ratepayers. So if someone shows up and says, why are you paying this amount of money to this type of an employee, we say, well, we did a study and this is in the market, and there's a logic to it. I think we were trying to accomplish that on one hand. On the other hand, we were trying to avoid it being in areas, and there's a lot of them, where salary ranges are highly, significantly above market today. Trying to create a transition process so that, number one, people weren't receiving a pay cut, and number two, so there was some ability for compensation above and beyond even what they're currently making, either through non-based pay performance options that we could choose to implement later, and through this Schedule A, Schedule B idea that leaves employees that have been hired within an existing salary schedule the ability to move up through that salary schedule that they were expecting on the date we hired them. So that's really the combination of these recommendations was attempting to achieve those broad goals. Is that a fair summary?
That's good.
Blake?
So do we have, you said that you had, after the ad hoc committee made these are the recommendations coming forward, did you say you had a meeting with the staff?
Yeah, I had a meeting with the staff yesterday.
Okay, and
Two-
what concerns were you?
2 days ago, I apologize.
What concerns were you hearing there?
I think overall, the consensus was positive, but I feel there is some confusion as to, or discontentment with the comparable agencies. Because you can see when you look at the data set here compared to another set, depending on what your comparables are, it's going to have a data effect. So I think those that have been receiving this salary under their old report has been increased to this salary, or these guys were previously under the recent report paid higher than this other classification. Now when you change the list of comparables, that's kind of switched. So I think a lot of it is maybe just a misunderstanding or just discontentment with the list of comparables.
Okay, so pay for performance as opposed to COLA was not an issue.
The staff are here. I didn't get a feed on it. I thought that was positive. But the thing is, there are going to be some individuals that's going to be a benefit to them. There are those that are maybe on the 3rd step of a 7-step progression that will not be a benefit to them because they're not at the end of their classification, and they cannot be getting a COLA because they're not going to Schedule B.
Okay.
So if you're the majority of the staff that are at the end of your range, at your end of your classification, you can now have an opportunity to receive the 5%. I think overall that's a bonus for everybody. It's those that aren't there, I think, that are going to be, that are not going to benefit at that. They're just going to have to do the time to get there, and then that'll become a benefit to them.
Once that person in A receives that, say they receive that 5% on a continual basis, that just skews the difference between Class A and Class B down the road until that individual leaves or retires from the district.
It would not skew the actual monetary step number because it's a non-based pay and it's not it doesn't affect that range.
Okay, it's non-based.
It's non-based.
It's a one-time.
One time lump sum.
On an annual basis.
Every year.
Every year it gets evaluated. Okay.
So, I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
so LaRue, with regards to the comments from staff on the comparators, was that an issue of comparator agencies, or was it more specific in given classifications and who was being compared, on a, for any given position, why is this position at this other agency the comparator versus another position? You understand the difference?
Yeah, I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the overall was consensus is we still have lists of local agencies, the local districts, the City of Sparks and IPGID. And those are Nevada agencies. And staff feels that really, we are in California, we should be looking into California agencies. I did tell them that those are agencies that we are competing for staff with, or we are recruiting staff for. And even though they may be in Nevada, they are within our area, and that's who we are primarily recruiting. But I do understand their point. Nevada is a lower cost of living, so their salaries are lower. I think it is a legitimate point. However, from the district standpoint on what's a comparable agency, I think we have to take them into account. I think there's also concerns with them because Nevada has different certifications. You got, different you now need a state of Nevada certification opposed to a California certification. I also think that they would have liked to have a wider range of California. So maybe that even though we don't actively recruit from, say, the Bay Area or LA, those are opportunities for people to come in. But again, if you tie it back to where's our local area, what are we really recruiting for? It doesn't stop us from not obtaining anybody there. But the local area is what we're recruiting for. And again, that has merit to it as well. But I think at some point you have to define the boundaries on it. If that boundary is California from top to bottom, so be it. If it's this area here, local areas, so be it as well. I think it is a benefit on the likewise going the other direction from Nevada to the Bay Area, higher salaries typically, however you have higher cost of livings. So anyway, we've addressed those points in previous discussions. I think that's just one that staff continues to have, and I actually can agree with some of those points, meaning understand them.
Right? Sure.
I would, on that point, say that, at the Tahoe City PUD, we've done a very similar study as this with Shelley as the consultant in the past. We do use Nevada agencies as comparables. At the town of Truckee where I work, we've been through 3 or 4 of these. We do use Nevada agencies as comparables. This conversation in both of those areas was very similar, between the folks working on the study and the staff in terms of what's right. At the end of the day, you got to kind of settle and say, okay, here's a group that we think makes sense. And I think one of the problems that I helped create in this whole effort was a few months ago, there was a recommended list of comparable agencies. There was a request from staff to add to that. So I suggested, why don't we get all the data and then decide later? And so now we're in the middle of deciding later. On one side, we've got more information in terms of how you pick this agency and how it changes the results. But on the downside, it starts to create the opportunity to create a perception that you're trying to manipulate the results upward or downward, which isn't what you're supposed to be doing with these types of analyses. You're supposed to kind of pick what seems to be a reasonable market area, settle in on that, do the data analysis, and then move forward. And so, we had one group of agencies, and we actually stuck with it at our last board meeting. We're now recommending we finesse it a little bit further. I'm comfortable with the group of agencies that we have based on, the thought that's gone into this effort here, and also seeing how this has been done with other local agencies, at least that I'm familiar with. So.
Okay.
And if I could add on to the classification component.
Yeah.
I think what happens when we're looking at staff salaries, they're interested in it. So when you get a revised list of comparables, the first thing everybody's doing, and I would probably do the same, is go look at the comparable districts, match my classification, current classification to what the corresponding agency classification is, and you start reading the job descriptions. And I think sometimes there's some confusion where staff may perceive, well, this is what I do here, and this is what it appears they do there based off that conclusion from a job description or what have you. And they may have a different perspective on what the recommendation for that salary is. So I think from staff, and I can understand this, if you're looking at your job description or you know what you do and you read another job description for somewhere else, you know, they're pretty aligned close to one another. However, they're not, this isn't being used or it's being disregarded on this
It's the same title but with different job descriptions.
Yeah, so-
with different expectations.
And what it is staff is making their own conclusions to this, and I would do the same. And I think what happens is if they don't have all the information, sometimes they're not coming to the right conclusions, or at least have the answers to understand why those decisions and cookie comparos are being used. And we've hired the consultant to go through that data, make those determinations and recommendations. I could just see from the staff's perspective where if they don't understand how that's done, and in their eyes they think it's an equal, and it's not, you could have a little bit of a disappointment and discontentment there.
Right.
Can I ask Shelley a question as far as other districts that you've done consulting for and stuff like that? When you get this, you know, if you run into a situation similar to TTSA where you have those salaries at a range that are above the class, you know, above the norm, you know, are these issues that we've addressed as far as, are they used in bringing other, you know, everybody up to the right speed here?
Yeah, I mean, so typically when an organization is over market, you know, the normal way to resolve that is you just freeze the salary range, and then you implement a second range that's lower, and then the employees are just kind of stuck in that range. You know, what the issue here is, and I've seen a handful of other organizations struggle with the same thing, which is part of where the ad hoc committee came up with a recommendation is I contacted other organizations that have implemented something similar, such as a range A and a range B.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's an easier fix if you have, you know, a handful of classifications that are over market, and they're over market by say 5 or 6%. You can just freeze a range for, you know, one cost of living or two. The problem is, and I do have a few other clients that are struggling with the same thing that you are, is when you have so many classifications that are so far over market, trying to continue to incentivize those employees, you don't want them to take promotions and they cost money. You don't want, you know, you don't want everybody topped out for the next 10 years and you're providing no incentive for them to work as hard as they can for your organization. And so some of the recommendations that the ad hoc committee has proposed is information that I've collected from other organizations that have struggled with the very same thing. I don't know that there's a perfect fix, but I think that what they've come up with gets us close and helps protect some of, you know, your current employees. And there are a lot of organizations that have gone to implementing two salary schedules just for that purpose.
Okay. Thank you.
Just one other comment on the comparable agencies. Those adjustments that were made, I think, had the netted result on an organization-wide basis of pulling the salary ranges up from the group. There may have been individual positions that ended up being a little lower as compared to a little higher, but on average throughout the organization, the salary ranges with the comparable agencies that the ad hoc committee is recommending would be higher on an average organization-wide basis than it would be with the comparable agencies that we had approved at our last board meeting.
Okay.
I don't know the details of the pluses and minuses by position, but.
Yeah, you know, when you come to trying to meld everything together here, you know, the concern I see is the complacency within the organization once you reach those top steps. And I feel that the excellence of this organization, you know, we've always provided, you know, leading wages. And I just don't want to see us go back into a period where there is complacency, and people do always strive to do their best here at the plant, which has been proven with the amount of, you know, awards and everything that this organization has received. So we do want to maintain our excellency here and try to meld a two-tier system together here the best we can, you know, to have the operation running as smoothly as possible.
And employee retention.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
I'm going to step back to
Okay.
Lou's description of the, you know, the classification of the comparator classifications of other agencies, and that staff should have an open door if they have an issue, are confused by why certain classifications, why is somebody at TSD or somebody at Tahoe City PUD being compared to them, that they bring those to Shelley or to Vicky, to LaRue, and it gets to Shelley, that, you know, they're given a valid explanation. The board is in no position to look at those and really make judgments. We're not prepared to do that, but if staff has concerns that the incorrect classification position at other agencies are being used, that, you know, they have, you know, the opportunity to ask that and hopefully get an explanation as to why those positions are being used.
Okay.
You know, we rely on the consultant to make those comparisons, and I'm sure there's a valid reason, but, you know, if it's unclear to staff, they should.
Okay.
That is occurring. If they have questions, they typically, I direct them to Vicky, and then she will have a conversation. I'm assuming she gives it to Shelley. But before we move on, though, I did want to take the opportunity to address some of these tables here.
Yeah.
And it's really for the benefit of staff. We had our staff meeting while going through these tables. I did not do a good job explaining it to them, and I think if we could just take a few minutes, Shelley, go through that process, because I think what's going to happen now is staff is going to go ahead and look at these tables, try to make a determination of where they're at, and I'd rather have her explain her table, as I didn't do a good job trying to explain them. So what I put on that thumb drive are three. It was the summary of detail, and then list of agencies, detail.
So what page in the board packet are we in?
We'll pull them up.
Okay.
And where some of the confusion in yesterday's meeting was why there was differences in salary recommendations, because one table would show this and one would show this. And I tried to explain it in an email, and I thought it'd just be best if we just walk through one. That way everybody knows how that process is, so then staff can go back, run through the scenario, understand what's happening.
I think we're on the right track. We're on the right track
I
here.
think we're on the right track.
Yeah, I mean, this is long overdue.
What percentage of our
Most
employees
agencies do
That's good.
5 years or so.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can open up the one that says detail and summary.
Since I've been here,
It's only been how many years?
15.
So what I was hoping for, Shelley, was that if you can maybe pick one classification, walk through the process again, and then find out how we use the other sheet, the summary sheet, to pick the range. And then we can kind of go from there.
Absolutely. So
And if you want to use mine.
I am
okay.
going to use a general manager, if that's okay. So on the general manager, really the columns that matter is, it's really kind of the last piece. Actually, you can go this is fine, you're on the general. So it's really these rows that matter, because that's the 75th percentile and the percentage that you're below the 75th percentile. So you're 6.17% below the 75th percentile on total compensation for the general manager. So then when you go to the other spreadsheet,
Can you guys see that okay
general
from where you're
manager
sitting?
at the top. So what this is telling you is, this is what the current maximum salary for the general manager is $16,805. The adjusted labor market 75th percentile is the 18,031. So what we're trying to do is figure out what your new maximum salary needs to be when we add in all of your current benefits. We're not changing benefits. So we're keeping benefits as they are. So when we take your current benefits, I'm trying to figure out what does your new maximum salary need to be to get you to the labor market 75th percentile for total compensation. So in order to do that, I literally just set up a separate set of spreadsheets. Sorry, Michelle, can you go back to the other one real quick? That looks just like this, but but I'm playing with this maximum number to figure out, when I change this, how do I get the total compensation number equal to the 75th percentile for total compensation? For some of the classifications, the benefit package is so rich for your organization that I have to adjust the maximum salary a greater amount than the percentage that you're over market, because we have several benefits that are a percentage of base pay. So the greater that base pay is, it just compounds some of those benefits. So if I were to just say, okay, the general manager is 6.17% over market, if I subtract 6.17% from your current salary, chances are you're still going to be over market because it's compounding on those benefits that are a percentage of base pay. So once I figure out what that new maximum salary needs to be to get you equal on total comp, then I put together what I call a salary matrix. It just creates, we have like 300 different ranges, and there are 6 steps, 5% between, and there's a consistent amount in between the ranges, because what we want to do is have some consistency, which you don't have right now. So at the last board meeting, the direction was to make consistency, make all the ranges similar in terms of the number of steps, the percentage between, that type of thing. So I have to take kind of whatever number I came up with here to get you equal, and I go to that salary matrix, and I find the new range that has a maximum that's as close to that number as possible. So if you go back to that other one, sorry. For this particular classification, it's going to be this range 340, which is on this other document, and that gives me a maximum of $17,998. So that's what you have to pay your maximum salary when added to your benefits to get to the total compensation 75th percentile. And then this is just the difference between your current and the market. So it's not going to be exactly as what you see on the data sheets, because there's a bunch of other things that have to go involved in trying to get to that number. But the point is to create consistent ranges, and that's what we have to do to create consistent ranges.
Okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
The benefits that are a percentage that are effectively tied to salary, I know one of them is that TTSA pays the employee's share of PERS. Are there other ones?
Yeah, there's like life insurance, long-term disability, Social Security. So there's 3 or 4 different ones that are a percentage of base pay. So, and certainly the CalPERS is the biggest because it's 8%. You guys do Medicare only, so that's a small amount. But when you add all those up, it can impact that salary.
What percentage of salary are the benefits, generally?
I don't know that I can answer that question. Usually benefits are about 30% of the compensation package.
35.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the typical. I can't swear by that because I haven't looked at it that closely for you, but usually benefits are about 30 to 35%.
So, Shelley, did I understand what you said correctly? That so, for instance, if TTSA did not pay the employee's share of PERS, then that wouldn't be a part of the total compensation that you're looking at, which would then mean that the pay ranges might be higher, but that the total out-of-pocket to the agency would be the same. It's just that the employees would be paying the PERS, but they'd have a higher salary.
Correct, because I'm trying to get to that total number.
Yeah.
So however you shift those benefits around, if you weren't paying the 8%, then we would raise those salaries to get, if you were below market, of course.
Right.
We would raise those salaries to get to, because that's 8% of the benefit we're taking away.
Right.
Well, the only place that I can put that back in is in base pay, because I can't tell you to pay more in healthcare or whatever.
Right.
So I'm going to put it back in the base pay.
Okay.
Okay, let's have any staff comments that you want to bring back to us on this study?
It sounds like there'll be an
Yeah,
opportunity.
yes.
I just wanted to thank Shelley for explaining the difference between the two sheets, because I think I finally get it. And I do want to
It
say,
takes me a while sometimes too, so if you got it that quickly, great.
I think that, one of staff's concerns is that we're entering into like a negotiation period as soon as this is complete. And so when you're basing it on this total compensation number and you're setting salary ranges based on that number, and then we're looking down the road thinking, well, that could shift and change, and now we're stuck with this, these new schedules. And I realize maybe that doesn't affect current employees, but it does affect future employees and your ability to hire good employees in the future. And so I think that I'm just speaking to that concern, looking at total compensation. And then that not all of us receive all that same compensation. You're factoring in, full medical for a family. We have a lot of, single young guys and people who don't have families, and that's adjusting their pay up and down.
Okay,
That's my only comment.
great, thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just my own question, and I've heard this asked a couple of times. I don't really have an answer right now. It wasn't really clear during the last meeting on Monday. With regards to the implementation, Schedule A versus Schedule B, my question would be, when Schedule B meets parity with Schedule A, do people that are currently on Schedule A transition to Schedule B, and then that Schedule A would be eliminated, and then those people are eligible to receive COLA again?
Good question.
That would be my
Yeah.
expectation.
Yeah,
We didn't
That's
get
an
that detail.
implementation
Yeah.
detail, but.
So when I started off, I said these are the primary directions, those are the implementation details to it. But as we come to, the end goal is to get one salary schedule.
Right.
So there has to be some transition to, once they meet or exceed, I would assume the benefit would be to the agent, to the employee, meaning they would move up to the one that benefits them. Whether that means the omission of that position in Schedule A or not, we haven't gotten that detail. But the goal is to get the one salary schedule through time. And,
Okay. Anybody else?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so we
I
got, I think
think
we got
we're-
direction here with the agencies to be included here, and we'll wait to see the final results next month.
I'd like to thank the ad hoc committee for spending the amount of time that they've done on this. I think we're on the right track. This whole study and this whole issue we're dealing with is long overdue. And I'm happy to see that we're on the right track here.
I think anytime that the employees can get clarification as far as knowing what the market is, knowing what their job descriptions are, is immensely helpful.
Yeah.
Down the road, so. Thank you, Shelley. Okay, so we'll wrap that
Good
up.
job, Blake.
We'll come back next month with those figures.
I wasn't trying to ram this down
With the final
anybody's throat,
report.
but I approve of what you guys
Okay,
are doing.
let's go on to item 4.2, approval of change order number 2 for 2019 plant concrete repair projects.
Good morning, directors. I wanted to pull up some photos while we're.
Are all those trucks out there the concrete guys or the roof guys?
Concrete.
Okay. There we go.
Okay, good morning, directors. Jay Parker, engineering manager. So what we have before you today is a couple change orders, 2 alternatives. And this relates to our ballast ponds and the way that the concrete repair work is going in the ballast ponds. So to begin with, that's what the ballast pond looks like. That's empty, it's at the far end of our plant. It's used to ballast, basically to flow so we can equalize flow through the downstream. And that's another view of the same thing. So during design, we went into the ballast ponds and we identified some major crack repair issues. So what you're looking at here is in ballast pond 26, and that's kind of a distant view. Should have rotated this, but you're standing on a bank,
Looking
off the
down.
bank, and you're looking down through the crack. So that crack there is probably about 6 to 8 inches wide.
Hmm.
And that's a close-up view of that same crack. So in the contract documents, we had outlined these cracks to be repaired, these large defects. And we invited a number of concrete contractors to come out and assist us in developing our contract documents to walk the ballast ponds and take a look. We contacted 3 or 4, and none of them came out. So we basically tackled this the way we saw it best, and that is to take these and saw cut, and remove the defect and then pour, and then larger cracks to fill those cracks. So that's another major defect. I want to show you a crack. Another major defect. Here's a crack. Actually, that's a major defect. Let me go one more. So
Are
here's
they using
crack.
a shrink-proof grout?
They're using, it's a Sikaflex product, so it's a cementitious, it's a polymerized 2-part cementitious trowel-on product. So it's basically when it goes in, it kind of adheres to the side walls of the crack after they've routed it and opened it up a little bit.
So it's like an epoxy in with the,
Well, it's polymer
Cementation, yeah.
mixed in with cementitious.
Thank you.
And so what they do is basically they come in and they route this crack, which means that they open it up, they clean it out, and then they apply the trowel on this product. So for both categories, we had crack repair, and we also had major concrete spalling repair. For both of those, we had to come up with our own estimates, as to what we would want a contractor to do. In these areas, water stop was showing. Not a good situation to be in a water holding basin. So we figured, okay, let's repair those. During the job, they walked, well, after we awarded the project and they were down in the ballast pond, they walked the project and identified a bunch of other areas where cracking was occurring that was repairable. So, our opinion prior was that these were inconsequential cracks. They were not all that, feasible to repair, et cetera. They're coming in and saying, no, we can do that, but we want to do it at the unit price that they bid. The problem with the unit price that they bid is that it was based on a very small quantity. So, we had, say, 12 linear feet of concrete spalling or crack repair, or whatever the numbers are, but they came in with much higher numbers, which made the unit pricing very unfavorable. So we said, no, stop. We want to revisit this, and we looked at the contract, and at that point they had done some extra work, which was about $10,000, to repair some additional areas that our engineer had authorized. So that's what alternative B is going to be here. But alternative A, what we said is, well, the contract documents allow us, if the unit pricing on the estimated quantities, if the estimated quantities exceed 25% of what we had estimated, that we are allowed to pay up to 125% of the quantities using that unit cost. However, the agency at our own discretion has the ability to go to time and materials cost plus basis for anything above beyond that. So the advantage to that is that if you were just strictly to the unit pricing, they would come in and say, okay, I've got 800 feet of cracks. I'm gonna repair those. We have no really ability at that point to say, no, only do 400 feet. We have better ability to do that if we do a cost plus basis, because it's time and materials not to exceed. We could be walking in the basin with the contractor, prioritize the cracks, and go, okay, we care about this crack, but we don't care about this crack. And so we asked them, okay, what is a time and materials not to exceed final cost number, total number, to repair all repairable cracks in the basin? So and they gave us a final number. Now, that's not all cracks, because not all cracks are considered repairable. Eventually, they will be 10 years from now, but not now. So they gave us a final number on all the repairable cracks, and it's to the tune of, I believe it's 176,000. Okay. But with understanding with them that I mean, unless the board chooses to elect to repair all cracks, that all repairable cracks, is that the staff, our staff would be with them, watching them, prioritizing the cracks as to which ones we want to have repaired. So that the estimate, you know, is high because it's all cracks, but the intent would be that we would be doing something less than that unless you authorized us to repair all cracks. Am I being clear enough?
Yeah.
Okay. That's alternative A. Alternative B would just be good. Nope, we're not doing any more cracks other than what was originally specified, which were the major ones that we're looking at here, plus that 10K of extra authorized work that we had allowed in the field, and then we would just, not that we would drop it completely, we would then watch it and rebid it, you know, a couple years. We're not just, we have a contractor here on site already. If we have to go out to bid again, we got to go through the whole process again, and there's going to be some administrative costs, if you will.
Can I ask a question? How much prep time is involved for you guys in this process?
Very little. I mean, we basically empty a DP, wash it down a day or two,
Okay, and then they come in and do the
then
work.
they come in.
Okay, go ahead, Dave.
How often do you drain this vessel to inspect for cracks?
Well, so we drain it every week in the summertime to wash it down, basically for algae control and sludge and other things to keep it clean. With respect to crack inspection, I would say every couple of years. And the last time we did it was when we had a concrete repair expert or proficient person on the staff. They provided some.
The second question, Jay, is how do you know what volume of content we're leaking through this? Is there a way to monitor the gallons or the content of the vessel so you know how much we're losing through cracking?
We don't believe we're losing anything at the moment. What we're trying to prevent is a situation a few years from now, if we didn't do anything to repair these, that we would be leaking.
Further deterioration.
Further deterioration will compromise this.
Okay. So you're asking for the one, go ahead.
So this stores raw effluent, and is there some kind of a like clay membrane underneath the concrete? So if the concrete starts to leak, there's some other, is there a secondary barrier?
So first to clarify, this is, and I apologize, I should have clarified in the beginning, this is not raw.
Okay.
It's not.
It's secondary effluent.
Yeah.
So it's been through a lot of our stages already.
Okay.
And to answer your question, no, some of our ponds are clay lined, but usually those don't have a concrete layer, if you will.
This doesn't have a clay lens
No.
underneath it.
Okay.
In normal operation, are you using these? Or is this just kind of storm-related?
No, these are daily use.
Daily usage.
Okay.
It's for our ballasting, so we can control our flows into our other facilities like BNR and for the effluents.
So this basin is already been treated somewhat, but this is just before it goes into BNR.
Correct.
And
Yeah,
that
well,
has-
actually,
before
one
and
of them is
after.
pre-BNR and one
One
is
is
post-BNR,
post.
the way we operate them.
Yes.
So it's not, it does serve two purposes, like you're saying. One is to ballast, equalize flows, but the other is a holding basin for pre-BNR and a holding basin for post-BNR flows.
Right. It just, listen to your report, I mean, you either pay now or you pay later. And that's what we got here. I'd recommend, well, we have a recommendation here?
Well, isn't the price gonna be higher later?
Exactly,
Yes.
well, that's what they're asking for, A or B here.
The staff's recommendation is that we proceed with the work now, because later on, you're gonna be subject to additional bidding costs, what have you.
Yeah.
And
Plus setup.
Yeah,
Yeah.
demo, mow, the
Yeah.
unit price may go up. You have the contractor on site now, they're a good contractor. We've discussed it, and we really do think proceed now very similar to what you said, you're gonna pay now or
Yeah.
pay later, and it's best to be proactive to repair that. It's just the quantity, we were just unfortunate to have such a huge unit cost. So we feel that we proceed and accept the change order for A, I believe this was the first.
Yeah,
Right.
And you're happy with the work the contractor's doing and the product that you're getting?
Yeah, Q and D is great.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, Q and D's amazing.
Right. We have a good
I've worked
contract
with
on
them in
site.
the
They're
past.
doing really good work for us.
Yes.
I'll move that we, what are we looking for, approval of contract modification, alternative,
A.
number 2, alternative A.
Okay, we got a motion and we got a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Jay.
Okay, thank you. I do have one other item if
Okay,
we're ready.
sure. Let's do it.
I'm sorry, I suppose I should be ready for.
Yeah, I'm ready for you.
So this is the SSMP
Mhm.
plan audit. So every 2 years, we need to, the agency is obligated to go through its SSMP and review any areas of deficiencies, improvements that need to be made. And you're obligated to do it perhaps more frequently if you have SSOs. And fortunately, we're in a position where we have no SSOs. So we're at 2-year frequency. And we review the audit against what the regulations, the current regulations require, and look for areas that need to be improved. There's a series of 9 points that are listed on the memo that we review against, and there's 11 elements in the SSMP that we review those elements against what the goals are. And in that process, we've identified a number of we'll call them improvements that need to be made. Mostly they're name changes, things where people have retired or have moved into a different position, et cetera, that are no longer functioning in the capacity that this document indicated. And then as well, in addition to that, we've made some improvements with respect to things like flow monitoring manholes, level sensing manholes, as we wanted to acknowledge, modeling, et cetera. So the recommendation is for the board to adopt this audit, and then if adopted, we would then go ahead and make the improvements to make these changes.
Good. No new SSOs.
No new SSOs.
Perfect.
911.
Okay, do I have a motion to
Maybe
accept
like-
this, the audit?
Yep.
report?
I'll second.
Okay, I got a motion by
Nice job.
Director Wilkins, a second by Director Northrop. Do I have discussion?
No, just
Okay.
complimenting
Yeah.
staff on the job, nicely done.
Okay, so let's start with the annual budget for fiscal year 2019-20.
So what you have in the packet here is the proposed annual budget for fiscal year 1920, 2020 for the board's consideration. What I'd hoped to do was to hit the topics, the big topics primarily, just doing a quick summary of the tables in here instead of going through each item line by line. I'd like to follow it up with some additional slides that I have on a PowerPoint presentation to supplement this, which I thought was kind of interesting information, and then propose and get some ideas from the board of directors to see how we'd like to move forward with future budgets and what the expectations are on that. So just to recap, a few years ago we made the decision that we're going to change the formatting and how we're going to do budgets here. So I really see this as the second year of that 3 to 4 year transition. When we first started, we had just general numbers, not very much description and detail to how the amounts were assigned. Last year, we went ahead and provided that definition, and we did one for the admin fund, the operation and maintenance fund, and then all of our funds. So we kept it fund related. And then this year, we took one of the funds and expanded on it, meaning the operation and maintenance fund, and added in the detail of the sub-departments, the operations, the maintenance, the IT, and the engineering. So as you see, we're getting into more detail. So what I wanted to do today was just kind of hit the big points on it, address any questions you have, and then proceed with it with some of the additional information.
Go ahead.
So going on page 7 here, the way this report's formatted is we look at the operating budgets, which are the admin and operation and maintenance funds. We're going to review what they did for the year, and then make a recommendation on what the next year is. Then we're going to go to the capital improvements to review what it did for last year, and then make recommendations for next year. So when you look at the administrative fund review for 2018-2019, you see we had exceeded the budgeted revenue of property tax by about 28%. So I'm just gonna hit the revenues, expenditures, and net income, and if we want discussions in between there, we can have those as well. The expenditures on this were exceeded by approximately 32%, giving us about $2.9 million opposed to the budget of $2.2. Our overall net income was $0.9 million, which is about 15% than what we exceeded here. So even though we had larger expenditures for the admin fund here, the reason the percentages aren't that drastic for the net income is because we also had an increase in the revenues. Hitting some of the points within the expenditures here, because they are quite considerable, there was a large discrepancy of 26% when it comes to the salaries and wages for the administrative department. I think when the budgets were projected, prepared last year, the COLAs were not taken into account. We did have a considerable amount of overtime, and I think there was just a level of conservatism that was applied to that number there. Going to the retirement benefits, we anticipated a budget of $200,000. We came in of $160,000. That's just, I think we're just taking a conservative approach for that. One of the larger increases as well here is a substantial one for health insurance. That's really attributed to the rate increases, staffing increases, and as well as some additional insurance requirements for the current and retired employees. So moving on to Fund 1, which is the Operation and Maintenance Fund for 2018, this would be table.
Well, can we just take a quick
Yeah,
step backwards,
sure.
just under the benefits, so the line item that's defined as retirement, that's the CalPERS pension contributions on behalf of the district. That's what retirement constitutes?
No, this is the daily retirement, the PERS contribution for current employees now. If you're referring to the unfunded accrued liability portion, that's subsidized through Fund 6, I believe.
And I saw that, but that was the additional discretionary payment. Under retirement, there's the normal cost, the percentage of salary, plus there's your required UAL contributions. Those are all under retirement. That doesn't constitute retiree health. You got health insurance down below, and there's not a distinction between the current employees' health insurance. I know we provide retirees with health insurance as well. Are those both lumped together in the health insurance, or is the retiree health insurance somehow lumped in the retirement line item up above?
No, the retirement health insurance is under the health
Insurance.
category below. The
Okay.
retirement category does not include the unfunded liability. So we make an annual payment towards that. That is not included into this budget. With the formats it is, but for this category it is not.
So what
Am I
is
correct?
in that category then?
For the retirement,
Yeah, what does that money go to? What,
you mean what's the breakdown of it?
yeah, what,
Is that
What
just the
activity?
normal
You're wanting
cost?
what percentage?
Oh, okay, CalPERS. Is there any, can you add this thing?
It's all CalPERS
That's CalPERS.
for active and, active employees only for Classic and Petra.
okay, and that's
For-
employee
For
and
the
employer
employer-
share?
For the employer portion only,
That's the employer share, that's not the employee share.
no.
Okay, so that shows up somewhere else.
It wouldn't because it's not our expense, it's
But,
theirs.
but the classic employees, 8% that you contribute
Is
on
in-
their behalf is in there.
Correct.
Okay,
Okay,
So,
okay,
okay.
keep going.
Okay. Going back to table 2, we have the same format, except now we're looking at the operation and maintenance fund. The revenues there, we were only 97% of the expected budget for revenues. For our expenditures, we were about 94% of the expected expenditures there. Trying to hit some of the points here. For the workers' compensation, for our pooled liability, that did go up substantially by to the tune of 55%. And the projection for our retirement, we were only about 60% with that.
You know what, one of the things on that one, you see on the employee benefit on retirement, it went down 40%. The approved budget is 1.2 and
Right.
it's 695.
and is that because in past years, before we started doing this additional discretionary payment, I think we had a $2.5 million additional discretionary payment, and you pulled that out of Fund 6.
Yeah.
But in past years, was the kind of required contribution also included in this estimate there? I'm just trying to figure out why those retirement numbers are so, so low.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that, particularly in Fund Zero, the admin, you had a 26% increase in salary, and if it's all just normal costs, that's typically percent of salary.
Correct.
Understanding that overtime is not PERSable, so that wouldn't come into play, but, some of that was, maybe additional staffing. I'm just trying to figure out where, yeah. And I'm wondering if maybe that was because when you budgeted it, you were doing normal plus the required unfunded liability payment, and you ended up taking not only the additional discretionary payment, but the required payment out of Fund 6?
Yeah,
I'm just,
the additional, the liability payments were not in here. We did address it, and we're thinking that when that budget was made at that time, that was based off of the previous number. We think that there is actually a little bit of a miscalculation in there, and we were being conservative. But moving forward, now that we have these other numbers, when you start looking at the 19-20 year, we're actually starting to look at the actual numbers for a comparison. Without having to go back and get into fine detail. There are no obvious ones, meaning, we took this payment and put it to there. We think we're just being kind of conservative with that projection.
Okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I just don't have a very specific and detailed answer for that one, without having to do the research. We will do that, and I can provide that information for you later. So moving on to, are there any questions on the ops and maintenance budget then, before we proceed?
What page are we on, LaRue?
We can go to page 11 now.
Okay.
So now that we reviewed the admin and the operations budgets for 2018-2019, now we're looking at 2019-2020. So what you have here on table 3 is a condensed breakdown, which we're going to apply uniformly to the other budgets moving forward. We show the actuals from 18-19, what we have proposed for 19-20, the difference in monetary value as well as percentage. If I can bring your attention to Appendix A. Appendix A is the budget here identified in table 3, just cleaned up without showing the differences. So going through here, we do expect this minor increase in the property taxes, about $50,000, less than approximately 1%. With the expenditures here, as you can see here, to address the point that you were bringing up before with employee benefits, we have something a little bit more in line. We did look into that to see if we are expecting increases, because that was a substantial increase from before, and we are still expecting to have future increases within the component of that.
I look at that, I mean, anything in an administrative fund, because we're now going and having having the counties collect our tax rolls. I mean, I imagine you had a lot of overtime involved with that end of it. I mean, are we gonna continue, don't we see a reduction somewhere in admin because of that?
We do. We had a lot of overtime, but we're thinking that overtime is going to be offset by the COLA that's coming in.
Okay.
Because we did have a lot of staff come in and take every single journal entry we had and convert it to the new coding system.
Okay.
We don't really accrue too much overtime when it comes to the billing component, because the program kind of takes care of it. But a lot of our overtime was really getting ready and changing the formats for our budgets, because we had general billing codes. They were applicable for the old format, but now we're just getting more detailed. You actually have to go back and literally pull every single one and define it to an appropriate department.
Good. Good.
LaRue, I should have asked this when we were talking about table 1 and 2. But
Sure.
I didn't, so I will now. So when I first looked at this, I was confused as to, on the expenditure, so for table 1, we're showing property tax revenue into the administrative fund, and then we're showing expenditures for the administrative division. We've broken the budget up into multiple divisions, administrative division, operating and maintenance division, lab division.
Yeah. There's 6 different divisions.
So between table 1 and table 2, do the expenditure categories in table 1 and table 2 cover all staff, or is it just the staff that are deemed to be in the administrative department. Expenditures show up in table 1, table 2, just the staff that are considered to be in the O&M department show up, and then as you move further into the budget, there's expenditures for the lab budget, the mechanical budget, et cetera.
Yeah, so,
So, what I'm trying to understand is if I want to look at this and just understand what's the total cost of staff to the agency,
right.
how do I do that?
You're gonna have to add up all those tables.
Right.
Right.
The format we have right now, and that's where the final discussion was
That's what, and I
was going to go
I
to.
talked a little bit about this earlier, but I just wanted to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding what I was looking at. Because the thing that confused me is we're kind of blending, we're showing our property tax revenue in the administrative fund, and we're showing our rate revenue in the O&M fund. Then we've got these 7 or 8 other divisions where we're spending money, we're not showing any revenue in that money, and it's a bit clunky from a formatting standpoint.
Right,
As
so,
opposed to, here's our revenue, here's each of our operating divisions, here's our expenses for each of our operating divisions. It would make it a little more clear for me.
correct. I agree, because right now we're addressing them per fund. That's how it's historically been done. In all reality, some of these funds are interchangeable. We can simplify this even simpler, easier. So when you look at the admin fund here, fund review, it is allocated to the administrative side of it.
Right.
When you look at the operation, it would be those 4 departments I addressed before. But at the end of the fiscal year, those leftover balances are transferred over to a different fund. So essentially, we should be reviewing this from a general fund standpoint, meaning having one fund, calling it a general fund, and then having the subdivision within there. So we're actually changing the way we're viewing it right now. Right now, we're looking at each department individually, because that's how we've operated here. We function by fund numbers.
Right.
In all reality, we need to kind of change the concept of how we review that. At the end of the day, it all comes together to the same place, but the idea is to have a general fund, have a capital improvements, a general budget, capital improvement budget.
But I think if you looked at our budget 3 years ago and you wanted to understand how much we're spending in O&M, you couldn't do that.
Right.
Because it wasn't broken out that way. If you wanted to understand how much we were spending on administration, you couldn't do that because it wasn't broken out that way. So I think it's great that we're now kind of compartmentalizing our expenditures by business activities, so you get to look at how much we're spending that way. And this is an evolution that you mentioned earlier. It's like a 4-year evolution that we're 2 years into. Right.
And hopefully when the discussion will come together towards the end, I can show you what I'm kind of thinking we should go.
Okay.
And it'll give you a clear picture of revenues, expenditures, and then a net position.
Okay.
This just shows you how much you're calculating for each different
fund,
fund.
per fund,
And
right.
we've got 11 different categories.
Yeah,
So,
we have 6 funds. And one of the funds, the request was to get more detail about each individual department so we can track them. So you have that, but as you can see, to maintain that process, you have one fund, but you have 6 departments. You got to break them down, you got to put them back together if there is an need or an option. But what this is a carryover from last year through the transition steps, and then now is when we take the next leap. So now that we have this data, we can start tracking it. Let's put it into a format that we can easily track, and the board is willing to, or is prefers to see.
So it becomes more efficient.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
And more transparent.
Most definitely.
Right.
But again, I was hoping just to hit the tables here and then
Yeah.
kind of go through there.
All right, thank you.
So on table 11 here, what you see is the actuals for 18-19 and the budgeted amounts. Revenues are very similar.
Table which?
3.
Table.
Okay.
Oh, I thought you said 11.
Page
Oh,
11.
page 11,
Okay.
table 3. And if you can see here, the total expenditures are approximately the same, difference about approximately $160,000. The net income is reduced this year of approximately $100,000. One of the biggest takeaways from this table is that the agencies and permits, agency permits and licenses have been historically done and funded by the administrative fund budget. And these are the state water, regional water quality control permits and what have you. We've actually stopped billing it to the administrative department and put it to where we feel it's applicable, which is the operations department. So that's why you see a 0 here for this year. And you'll see when you get to that side, it's going to be billed to that side, so it'll be part of that budget.
Hey, Laru, on the revenue side, you're basically rolling over last year's property tax into this year seems, extremely conservative. I mean, it's good to be conservative. I'd rather see you being conservative than, the opposite, but, I think TSD projected 3%, and amongst all the other agencies, I think we were the lowest.
Right.
At that, numbers are coming in, closer to, I think, 4 to 5%. What did the town in Tahoe City, probably, we're up in that range.
For an increase last year?
Yeah, year-on-year property tax
Excess valuation,
increase.
right.
Again,
We did have that discussion. If you look on table 1, we had a 28% increase. So we were estimating 3 based off the appropriation limits calculations, I'm referring to last year, and then we came in at 3.8. It was a conservative approach. I didn't feel we should be aggressive to go that far. I just wasn't confident that we would have 4% growth. Because it's contrary to what the ad valorem came in. They actually came in at 3.2 million for our appropriation limits, is what the revenue from their data says. I wasn't comfortable using 3.2 because historically you can see that they've been very conservative on their numbers. So at a minimum, what I wanted to do is to match very similar to what it was before.
I'm just anticipating
A little higher,
exceeding your projected revenues for property taxes
and it could.
by quite a bit.
So that summarizes the administrative fund budget. There's really no breakdown in that department because the administrative department is its own department. Where the discussion was last year is now that we have this operations and maintenance budget, we'd like to start seeing how much or how these departments are operated. So what you have here is an actual on table 4, which is on page 12. We're going to break down the 4 departments and each sub-department in each. The operations has the operations department and the laboratory. The maintenance department has the mechanical budget, I&E budget, and the warehouse budget. Engineering has engineering and safety, and IT is its own standalone. So what we did was we took all of our numbers from fiscal year 18-19, recoded all of them again. That's a lot of the overtime we did. During that recoding process, we were able to allocate those to the department. So now we knew which department was using what. So what you have here is the 18-19 per our reallocations, the projected 19-20 year, and again, the monetary difference as well as a percent difference. So I'll go through these real briefly, hit some of the bigger points. When you look at the operations budget sub-department by itself, you see there's an increase of approximately 450,000, which is about a 9% increase. The majority of that increase is attributed to salaries and wages, and employee benefits. There is the addition of the $170,000 of the agency permits and licenses that was transferred over from the administrative department to this department, so you see that identified there. Going on to the laboratory budget, there's an expected increase of approximately $120,000 or 14%, and a lot of those increases are attributed to salaries and wages and employee benefits as well.
So, so on the operations budget, we've got the salaries and wages line item, but in the administrative budget, we also have that retirement. We had salaries and wages, and we had employee benefits, and the employee so the level of, so if I'm just comparing table 1 and the level of information that shows up in there to table 4, and it's different.
The detail in the tables that you're seeing on 1 is like for retirement, workers' comp, Medicare. They're under the subcategory of employee benefits. So when you're going to table 4 and you see employee benefits, they have the same subcategories. It's just if we were to list them all up.
Right. And so I guess what and maybe this is for later, but the administrative it seems like we'd want to be consistent from one division to another on the expenditure side. Either if we're interested in seeing the breakdown, of the employee benefits, by line for one division, why wouldn't we be interested in it for all divisions? Right. Or if we're not interested in that breakdown, why wouldn't we be interested in it?
So you're providing a more granular analysis on the backwards looking 18-19 budgets, but for the forward looking one, for admin, it's only table 3, Dan, which I think is the same as
Right.
table, whatever that was for the O&M. It's less granular and rolled up.
Yep.
And so the question, is do we want, a more granular, representation of the budget so that when you're comparing it to the past one, you can look at it on a more line item by line item basis, or are we happy with kind of the rolled up version?
Right, so from my perspective, in terms of looking forward, I think where we've got, the different operating divisions, just having a line that says employee benefits is fine. But I think if we were to add to our budget format a kind of a summary type table that showed agency-wide what our total wages were and what our total benefits were, if we could see that more granular, just
You mean just as far as a general fund statement, combining all the departments and getting that compared with the revenue right there?
Right, so I'm definitely interested.
You don't want the breakdown there.
Well, I think from an agency-wide standpoint, I definitely want to know, how much we're spending on retirement, how much we're spending on workers' comp, how much we're spending on Medicare.
Right.
I don't necessarily need to know that division by division.
IT, whatever.
Yeah, but I would want to know agency-wide. So whether, from a tracking standpoint, if it's easiest to track it at that level of detail for each division and then add it all up, we can do it that way, or we can just have one table somewhere that shows this level of
And even
detail.
even tables 1 and 2 that are backwards looking at the past year's activity, there's obviously even more granularity you can get to than that. That's, you've broken down employees' benefits into 11 components, but there's, from a GL standpoint, there's probably a whole lot of additional line items there. But if we're going to compare year to year, probably the level of granularity that's shown in tables 1 and 2 would be good to reproduce for the projected budget as well.
Okay.
Is that, and Dan's saying he doesn't need to see it for each department, but at least for our current system of
He needs to see a
admin
general
versus
budget.
O&M, at the level of detail that's in tables 1 and 2.
Right.
That would be a good start. I know that in our budget, we have an appendix that's the ultimate granularity, which is, every GL, that's involved in each of these rolled up things versus every department, and it helps, I don't know that the board uses it, but staff uses it to figure out what were they budgeted for this. It was one table that has everything, but
We have that granularity.
It exists in our
It
system.
exists, we just didn't
It's
present
just
it
a
to you.
question of how to pull it out. and present it.
Yeah, it's there, because when you're making these, it's not a lump sum vehicles are broken down, membership is broken down, employee benefits are broken down. So what it is just how it wants to be represented.
Right.
So it just comes down to what level of detail you want and how it needs to be done, but all the information is there.
Okay.
So going on to mechanical, the laboratory budget, again, the primary increases are salaries and wages, along with employee benefits, with the increase of expected $120,000. Going to the mechanical, would you like me to go through the breakdown of every department and report that then? Okay, I can skip that?
Yeah, you can skip that.
Sure.
I guess jumping, so
Sure.
now you're at table 12?
Now I'm going right to table 12.
Okay.
So all those previous tables that are broken down, they are now summarized onto this table, which is the copy of the new administration detail. So again, we have the general expenditure categories here. What you have is a total revenue increase of about 1%. That's what we're expecting from service charges. We do have the total expenditure increase of approximately $2.2 million, and that is primarily related to the salaries and wages, employee benefits. We've had some increases in engineering services, simply because of the fact that we're having the master plan. We've had a lot of software improvements. We've reallocated a couple things from the administration department from there to here. So overall, we're looking at a net position of about $500,000 opposed to the 2.7 that was done last year. And those are all accounted for. Again, those are the topics and reasons why they were increased. And those previous tables that I was going through will give you a breakdown of each one of those.
Right. So the expenditures here show up in the operation and maintenance fund budget.
When you take the breakdown of the previous tables for each sub-department,
Yes.
when you put them together, that's how they're.
That's what they total up to, with the exception of the table 3. Is that right?
So table 3 is the admin fund.
Right, so the admin staff that I guess are housed in the admin fund are not a part of this O&M
Correct.
summary.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's why I was getting, we could use a general fund and combine the two.
Right.
So when you look in table 3 and table 12, they are the same format. The granularity isn't there. I mean, there are some parts in the admin that don't apply to operation and maintenance, such as director's fees, but the idea is we're getting more to a similar budget format. Okay. So going on to, now that we've done the operating budgets, which we call the admin and operation and maintenance, we can touch on the capital improvements real quick here. The wastewater capital reserve fund, we only did about 70% of the budgeted amount, simply because we didn't think the projects were not needed. They may have carried over from year to year. But out of the 5.3 that was allocated for the wastewater capital reserve fund, we spent about 3.7. A good chunk of that is the debt payment on the SRF loan. Go to table 14, which is the replacement, rehabilitation upgrade fund review. We've spent about 82% of the allocated budget for that. Do you want me to go back?
No, I just have a question. Looking at tables 13 and 14, I'm seeing the TRI improvements on both of them.
So what that is, that was for the Heiser project, and since we upgraded that portion, that project, some of it was allocated to rehabilitation and some was for capacity.
So the total cost of that project was 2.7? And so you split it down the middle between the two funds? Okay, all right, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't somehow being double dipped, the same amount accidentally being applied to both, so, all right.
Going to table 14 is the replacement, rehabilitation, and upgrade fund review. Out of the $4 million that were allocated, we've done, like I said, 82% of it, to the tune of about $3.3 million. Again, almost $0.9 million of it is for the debt service repayment.
15's connection fees, 14 is property tax and rates.
Correct. So now that we've reviewed 18-19, we looked at the capital plans moving forward, and it's a 5-year plan on here. So we look at the wastewater capital reserve fund 5-year plan. It totals $29 million. The first year is budgeted for approximately $3.5 million. The majority of that is for the debt service for the loan. And what you have here are the expected projects for the next ongoing 5 years.
So a couple quick questions on that one, LaRue. One, I don't see any monies allocated in there for solar project, consulting or, an actual on the ground one. I know it doesn't exist yet,
Right.
I guess I would love to see some
Conclusion on that.
5-year plan showing something allocated. And then the other one was just flashing back to when we looked at connection fees, which eventually led into the master plan process. And I remember the first cut that Sean Korn with HDR did on the connection fees, where we ended up with this potential reduction in our connection fee, and that was based on a list of projects that resulted in, I think, only $7 million in capacity expanding projects. And just kind of going back and going, I think we are on the right path there with the master plan and not, jumping into the connection fee at that time, because it looks like the projects have expanded even, you guys have identified more projects in the years since then, so it's.
Yeah, and I think once the master plan is done, we should look at their list and now.
Yeah, and I don't think we want to.
It's a dynamic.
It makes sense to
change it.
hold off on that connection fee analysis till we get a really much better, broader perspective, and that'll be the output of hopefully that study.
Great. Moving on to table 16, this is the fund, the rehab replacement upgrade fund. This is not funded by connection fees, this is from our property taxes and sewer service charges. Again, this list has grown as well from the past. The total amount on this one over the 5-year span is approximately $15 million. It includes debt service as well. For next year, scheduled or slated for $2.3 million. With each table in the description of the project, there's a brief summary of what the project may be. So one of the other things we talked about this past year was addressing the calipers amortization schedule. I did notice on table 17, those fiscal years should be moved up 1 year. So what you have is the 5-year plan here. This is not a commitment. We are not committed to maintain that 5-year plan. We're currently in a 30-year amortization. So the idea was to make the first year payment based on a 5-year schedule, and subsequently every year come back, reassess it, and see how that plays in our budget. So for demonstration purposes, we could just show you what the 5-year schedule is going to be, because the 1920 payment of $3.5 million has already been submitted.
I was going to say, that's already been.
That is done.
Okay.
And then what you have on table 18 is the end of year fund balances. And again, the reason this table is laid out this way is because we're looking at it on a fund basis. So you have a beginning balance, the direct revenues, which will be through connection fees or service charges, property taxes, any interest and revenues that we approve, any expenditures as defined per fund, and then the application of the unfunded liability payments. And then we have a projected fiscal year end balance. So when you add those projections up towards, for the end of this coming fiscal year, we're looking at approximately $47 million.
I had a couple questions on just the last couple tables. It looked like on table 18, the expenditures for Fund 1 shows $12.217 million. That didn't seem to agree with what I saw on table 12. It's not off by much, but
You're right there. So it's 12,202, 12,17. Yeah, the service seems to be a break in the link there. I'll have to check into that one.
And then just I guess, funding the UAL out of Fund 6, which is, I assume a board designated fund for repair and replacement, but we're transferring monies to pay down our pension. It's I guess it's a board discretionary decision, but it's a little bit of an interesting kind of shift of monies. And when I look at Fund 6, and we've got $25 million according to your table 18, we've got $25 million in there. I think you had, we've got 5 years of $3 to $4 million each, potentially going to pay the UAL down. That's $15 million of that $25 million, and there's no revenue in that unless you have excess funds from your operations. Plus there's another $14 million in capital projects. You take the $15 million UAL payments plus $14 million in capital projects that are identified. We're going to completely deplete Fund 6 in 5 years.
Well, when you deplete that, if that thing gets paid down, the UAL totally, it's costing us 7.1% a year.
I understand
on that, so the revenue is going to be on the upside.
So I just saying, for this budget, I'm thinking we're being very aggressive, and I know that budgets are just plans, and we have opportunities to change them, and I'm just highlighting to the rest of the board, I think that we're going to need to do we're going to have to
throttle back.
This is not, I wouldn't say it was written in this budget, and so therefore this is absolutely the plan. I see issues with this plan, and I don't mind it being in the plan, but I'm just raising to you guys that I have concerns about, implementing this plan over 5 years.
I look at it like we were talking about before, is on the revenue side, with all the expansion that's been taking place in the Truckee area as far as connection fees and stuff like that, service fees growing. what we project is very conservative on the revenue side. I think it's gonna be higher, and say the assessed valuation, like you said, instead of being, you know, could probably, you know, I think Placer County was 4.1%. I don't know what Nevada County was. Those are huge numbers.
Yeah.
And that definitely affects, I mean, that's why every year you take a look at it and you see what the, you know, what your revenues are to your expenditures and where you're decreasing and increasing and making those adjustments. But I think we've been extremely conservative on the revenue side here. So hopefully that large expenditure, as far as the UAL paid out, is easier to go by in the long term. Plus the cost saving, I mean, once it's done, I mean, what we're paying 7% on 15, you know?
Right. No,
Okay.
I'm fully support
Yeah.
trying to pay that down. I just don't know that we can be as
Yeah,
aggressive as we're indicating in
Projected to
table.
be, right?
There, you know,
Okay.
you know,
I
it may
understand.
take us 10 years to do it in a way that preserves reserves, you know, to be ready for.
You have to look at your reserve capabilities compared to your revenue side. And once that, you know, I think right now we're in a very safe position of making that adjustment. Every year we take a look at it, see where we are, see how our different categories are balancing out, and see what we have left over to, you know, how aggressive we are going to be to pay that down.
And again, the table is just to demonstrate what the 5-year plan. We're still only obligated for a 30-year schedule.
Sure.
We can easily make that any year. There's no penalties to me to revert back to that. This is just on the following discussion we had that we wanted to address this.
Sure.
Put it in the budget, be aware of it, but Blake is absolutely correct. If we don't feel we want to make that next payment next year, as that time comes, we will have that discussion, and we don't have to. We're just required to have the minimum payment. So like I said, this is, oh yeah, then we're hitting the appendix A and B, which is the simplified admin fund and operation fund budget. So what you see here is a budget based on fund. We would like to, on individual fund, the way we're doing it, we do move monies back and forth. I think there is a simplified version that we can apply. But before we want to get there, I wanted to maybe hit a couple other points that I didn't put here. Maybe Michelle could assist me with it. Any questions to the written budget before I move on to this one real briefly?
Go for it.
I want to come back to Blake suggested that in our 5-year capital plan that we include some type of a project to at least explore in more detail solar power, you know, to help offset the plant's energy demand. And, you know, I think it's not in the current budget, and if we want to add it, then we should talk about that now and provide that direction to staff. So, Blake brought it up, so I just wanted to not have that get glossed over.
One of the agenda items is to cancel her MOU with
Right.
the seed. So the next step is to start looking into that. I personally haven't really given it much time to see how much a solar system would cost, so I'd have to rely on someone's experience with that. So we could put it in the budget. I don't know how much assistance I'd be.
Or what we could do would be to put something in, like either for this year or next, to do some analysis.
Plan money?
Right.
Yeah, planning, design type money to figure out does it make sense or not for us, and then in future budget years, we can decide whether budget funds for it or not, because we might find that it doesn't make sense. And we don't need the capital dollars later.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
look at your utility cost just right there, 819,000 for operation just for
It may or may not
electricity.
make sense.
Right.
You know, it's huge.
It is.
Yeah. We need to look at it.
And we need to touch on that on the agenda item here.
Okay.
So this is just a different perspective of how we're looking at the departments. We're looking at it on a monetary standpoint, and I like to look at budgets as well on a percentage standpoint. So I won't go through every single one simply because we're just repeating everything again. If you go to, I'll touch on it real quick. So on the agency plan slide 2 here, we just kind of recap what our current existing funds are. That's really a redundancy from the written report. Next one, Michelle, please. So what you have here is just nothing more than a graphical representation of our actual 18-19 to our 19-20 budget. I kind of like doing this so you can quickly view where we are in comparison to previous years. Again, it's just a match of the numbers that were in the table. Next one, please. Here it is. I didn't realize the text was that small. So now we have the administrative fund. It's good to look at everything from a monetary standpoint. What I like to look at also is the percentage. So when you start looking at this for salaries and wages, you're looking at approximately 36% for salaries and wages towards the admin department, and employee benefits to approximately 20%. So what these tables do is it gives you a little bit of perspective on percentages and breakdowns of overall components. So we can go to the next slide, 2019. Again, this is just a breakdown again for administrative staff for the upcoming fiscal year, or this current fiscal year, on a percentage basis. If we can continue to the operation and maintenance, so this is just, again, just a graphical representation of the data that's in the report right now. It gives you comparison, all those things we hit where we have increases in contractual services, the professional services, you can see them here. I just like this format because it's just a quick reference to it. Again, I'm not getting into the details. So now what you see is the overall breakdown from last year, percentage-wise. We had salaries and wages equate to about 43% of our budget. Employee benefits were approximately 25. Can you go to 1920, please, ma'am? So now to break down for this upcoming 1920, we've got to start looking at the individual departments now, because that's what the written text was about, and we were starting to go this direction. That's a breakdown of what's in the departments there. So without going through every single one here, there's a breakdown percentage-wise of each expenditure category per department. And that's every sub-department, meaning laboratory, ops, instrumentation, electrical. But the one to get to is, and I won't go through all those because they're self-explanatory here. If you go to slide 17. This is the one I like to look to, and I think pretty interesting. This is where you were alluding to, Dan. Where's the place where we can kind of see everything? This is the everything for the ops and maintenance, and the idea is you get the everything to include the admin too when we go to a potential general fund concept. So breaking it down here, you have overall for that operation maintenance for the plant there, 39% of it is salaries and wages. Employee benefits are about 24%. The next highest one is about 14% for contractual services. I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of the percentages. I mean, you calculate themselves. I just find them quite interesting. I just caution when you look at some of this stuff, it is just a percentage, right? So if you're in a department that doesn't really have a product or perform a major function that accrues expenditures, it's going to be skewed data. So when you look at the warehouse, he doesn't buy parts, he doesn't build things and maintain things, he's just a warehouse. So when you look at his budget percentage of salaries and wages, it's considerable. Compared to other ones where you have, like the maintenance department, where they're actually buying parts, or their IT department, and taking on these expenditures, that when you look into the rate, and the relationship will be a lower percentage. So it's just, and how you look at it, I just wanted to give the board another perspective to look at there. And then the last two slides, there really is no comparison between Fund 2, the capital reserve, and the replacement rehab, because those funds change from year to year. I mean, those budgets change from year to year. So what you really have here is just a comparison of what we budgeted for the funds and the actuals. Again, that's just nothing more than a graphical display of the written text. I think it's helpful just to use the graphical at times, but I want to provide a little supplemental information, percentages, as well as the graphical side. So what we've done is we've looked at the budget for this year, and my recommendation is that we approve the budget as is, with some minor corrections to some of the comments we made here. But I was hoping we can kind of go to a different format here. So what I have in front of you here are two potential formats, and we can have discussions later on how the written budget is going to go. But this is more of a summary sheet on how we can start looking at our funds here, or our budget, excuse me. So like I said, Fund 0 and 1, they're funded by the property tax as well as sewer service charges, and then they get put into Fund 6. And we're tracking them separately. And that's why we're looking at the admin fund and the O&M fund. I recommend that we move forward with a general fund combining those together. So when you see on the revenue side, you got your property tax, service charge, and interest income for both of those two components. This will give us a snapshot of the revenues there. Then we have the expenditure side. As you can see now here, it's the admin department, operation department, and then all the breakdown of each one, so we still have the ability to see every single department there. And the total, yeah, the total actuals and proposed budget for next year. And there is room to edit this as we need to. I'm just trying to get a consensus to see if this is a format that it would be acceptable to the board. And then you get to the end, where you have a net position. So from a quick standpoint, you see how much we're making, where we're spending it, and how it has an effect to us. Now, when you do the budget, there's a lot of supplemental stuff that comes with it, right? You're gonna have a summary sheet that's gonna be the snapshot of everything. And we can have a discussion on what each one of these snapshots the board wants to see. Then we start getting to discussions on revenue. Exactly, what is a service charge? What are the incentives? When you get to the expenditures, we can define what the admin is, and give sub definitions and explanations behind there. But again, the idea was just to reduce our 6 funds into a smaller amount of funds, change the format we have, because now we're starting to collect the data on a lot of these departments. If you guys would be acceptable with that, what I was hoping I'd come back probably beginning of the year and kind of prepare a draft budget with some numbers and descriptions, just to give you an idea as to what it's going to be, get some feedback, and then bring it to you earlier into the year, so we're approving it not in August, and have some input. So that's the direction I was hoping for the general fund. And then when it comes to the capital improvements budget, as you can see, you have the same layout here. We've now taken the funds 2 and 6, combined them into the capital improvements. Here's your revenues, expenditures, per those 2 categories, and then you'll have your net position. There is some manipulations that need to be done, because some projects are going to be funded by the capital, by connection fees, some are going to be funded by sewer service charges, so there is some cleanup on there. But again, the intent here is just to see if this is the direction the board would be willing to accept. As I start making amendments to it, I can, like I said, bring it back in January, provide some to the board, see what they think, and this way, by the time the end of the fiscal year rolls around and we're drafting it for next year, we can have a more formal, finalized budget moving forward.
This is good.
Yes.
Very good.
So this budget for the
Nice and
year,
simple, condensed breakdown to revenue.
Right.
so the budgets for the year has only gone up a couple $100,000, right?
Over the year? No.
For the projected.
No, it's actually gone up a little considerably. So if we go over to, and this is where Dan was leading, when you don't have a summary, we're doing our math in our head.
Right.
So when you're looking at the admin budget, we have an increase of approximately, say, $700,000.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So when you're looking, oh, sorry. Yes, that's $700 for spending more. Our net position is still very similar to where it was before. And then when you're going to the operations and maintenance, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong tables, I apologize. If you go to table 3, for admin, we're actually doing about $100,000 less, projecting to do $100,000 less for the admin fund last year. And going to table 12, about $2 million in the operation and maintenance. So we're looking at about 2.3 million from last year.
What's the percentage increase?
No, we would actually be spending more than we're making. But that's expected. Yeah, we're making huge payments elsewhere.
Yeah.
If we were to maintain status quo as what we've done for previous years, you would see increases, but it'd be minor, typical of the CPI and small projects.
If you didn't take that UAL deduction
Yeah, that throws in.
that throws you in the red. Okay. But that just reduces the amount of reserve.
But I was hoping this could be a starting point, and I know there's fine details that each board director may want to see specific to their own interest, and we can definitely get into that. But I was hoping if I get direction on this, I could draft something up, give a template of where I think how the budget should look next year, the format, and then get feedback from you guys. And this way we're not making it closer to the fiscal year, end of fiscal year.
I like it. I
Yeah.
like this.
Agreed. A couple of additional pages I would suggest could be added to this. One would be,
Which one are you on, Joe?
I'm on the general fund budget.
You want the addition of all 7 departments as far as salaries and wages.
It is included.
Yeah, I could see 2 summary pages added to this that would be useful. One would be, if you took these exact same categories, but agency-wide,
Gotcha.
you know, so then we can see how much we're paying salaries and wages, how much we're paying for employee benefits across the entire agency. I can see that as being one summary sheet. You would see a second summary sheet, which would just be the total expenditure by department. So it would just show that, for instance, laboratory department, $816,227. Instrumentation and electrical department, $720,320. So you could just have one sheet of paper, look at look at all 12 departments and look at how much money you were spending on each department, and then have it and total it up that way. So you've got a quick snapshot as to where the money's being spent.
And we have all the data. We've been taking steps to get here. So whichever format you guys would like to see, I don't see any obstacles in that. It's just defining the format how you'd like to.
And then somewhere being able to see that breakdown on employee benefits, and there may be breakdowns in some of these other categories that would be of interest as well.
Like,
So just, first of all, just compliment Lou and Rochelle and your staff. I thought the budget, continues to really go in the right direction. It's very readable, a lot of great information. I really like your plan to meet early, in the new year to kind of iron this out. I think there's still some ironing out, but, eventually, hopefully we get on I would say the long-term goal is once we kind of get the, hopefully budget layout fairly static, that it becomes a 2-step process where, you bring a preliminary budget where there's, you're not looking for adoption at that board meeting, you're just looking for a presentation and feedback, and then come back the following month for incorporating any comments that you might get for adoption. But I like your plan. I particularly like rolling up funds 0 and 1 together, and I look forward to seeing that. And I've got ideas, but we can deal with that because you've already got that in your game plan, is to have some workshop type meetings where we can really play with that. So good job, you guys. Thank you.
okay, so you got direction?
We do. We still need approval.
We do need to make an approval for the budget. I so move. Director Northrup makes a motion for the approval.
Second.
Director Cox seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Budget approved. Okay, let's keep rolling, yeah. Okay, so let's go on to approval of Resolution 9, 2019 to revise the wastewater capital reserve fund budget and making final related findings.
Good morning, gentlemen of the board. Rochelle Chavez, Administrative Services Manager. So this resolution to revise wastewater capital reserve fund budget is something we generally see. So we're just giving you an update here. Our recommendation is to approve Resolution 9, 2019 to reserve making related funds.
Okay.
So is this an annual
This is
resolution that just,
Yeah.
are we doing anything different in this than we do every year?
This is the annual resolution we do, and we amend the fund, and what you see on the exhibit at the end is, the table on the end, is what we just did for the budget. So after we approve our budget, we have come back and we approve to amend the capital reserve funds. So that's what you see there.
And like, this is recommended to comply with certain government code provisions that the board make an annual determination about what you're going to use your connection fee money for. You produce this annual record that if there's ever an inquiry about you're sitting on this pot of connection fee, why, this is the why, and it helps you comply with those code provisions.
Okay, thank you.
Good. All right. We got, do we have a motion for approval?
I'll approve.
Director Norton makes the motion.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Okay, Director Tresson seconds it. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
And do we have to roll call on this one?
Roll call, please.
We have Director Wilkins,
Sure.
Director Northrup,
Yeah, approved.
Director Cox.
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
and President Lewis.
Yes.
Why do we have to have a roll call on this?
On resolution.
Because it's a resolution.
Yeah.
Just a motion on it?
You know, it's a motion.
Unless somebody's asked, you need a roll call on everything.
I think it's more per tradition as opposed to a legal requirement, just
Right.
FYI.
Okay. All right, so now we have approval of resolution 10-2019 to establish appropriation limits for 2019-20.
Additionally, this is another resolution that we bring forward to you every year, approving the appropriation limits for 1920. It is also a resolution, and if you go to the last page, you will see the calculations used based on values given by the counties, and this is our estimate for appropriation limits for the year 1920. And we recommend to approve.
So this is the GAN limit?
Yep.
Correct.
And so move.
Director Northrup makes a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Director Wilkins seconds it. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Northrup,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Tristan,
Yes.
and President Lewis.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
so I think I heard Dick say a minute ago, is we don't have to do this individual roll call thing.
It's sort of tradition on resolutions. We've always done it that way, but I mean, we could change it either way.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, when somebody's out there on a conference call, they do a roll call on every guy.
Yes, that is legally required.
So, all right,
Thank you.
let's go to item 7, approval to terminate an MOU of cooperative purchase for renewable energy with, let's see.
Yeah, so at the last board meeting, there was a little presentation by Mr. Palante, updating staff on, I mean, the board of directors on a site visit that he's done with the SEED program, and also some information regarding some workshops in the South Lake Tahoe. At the conclusion of the report, of their meetings, it was concluded that the SEED program was not something for us. We think that they're moving faster than we feel comfortable with. They weren't looking into the things that we thought that needed to be looked into. So our recommendation is that we still proceed with solar panel project, not so much with SEED. So we touched base with that last month. So what this is just a follow-up to confirm that action, which is to terminate the memorandum of understanding of cooperative purchasing of renewable energy with the Strategic Energies Innovation. What's attached here is an actual copy of the MOU. We would be potentially financially impacted, meaning we have to reimburse them for the cost of their feasibility study, where they assessed one property, not only with a pace and an expectation of what we wanted out of them. I just didn't think the communication was there. A lot of the information that we were providing wasn't being reciprocated.
We don't owe any money now.
Potentially, they sent us that one document for a feasibility study. There's some issues with it because we threw out quite a bit of parcels, and they picked one and said, here's the feasibility you think it is, and our determination was that's not the parcel we were talking about. We were wanting the feasibility of this parcel.
So there's no information that they provided which really of use to us, and yet we're responsible for paying for it.
Per the agreement.
But Lou, to answer Dan's question precisely, no. We don't owe them any money today, but if you choose to develop a solar power project on the site of land cited by the consultant in the report they provided, you may, if you approve a construction contract with by October 2021.
Okay.
There's
So you can't use their information and then go out and get somebody else without,
That's the purpose.
they'd have to track that, and that's probably a timeline that we're probably not on anyway.
That's the provision,
And
that's the
and they
exciting.
maybe looked at a parcel that
We're not interested
we're
in.
unlikely to put a solar project
Right.
on, so.
So if you put it on a different parcel, then it's,
All right. That's,
I think the parcel is the one right next to you.
I think the alternative is we have to participate in seed, and so, we don't wanna do that.
Okay, do we have a motion to terminate the MOU?
So moved.
Well, okay, Director Cox makes the motion, Director Tresson seconds it. Further discussion here? All in favor? Aye.
Just a follow-up comment. The town where I work, we were considering doing something with these guys too, decided not to. What we've done since then is hired it's like a consultant that can come in and do more specialized kind of design work. So we've hired that consultant. They're looking at some solar project possibilities for the town. And then if we decide to move forward with one, we would use them to help us in a design-build type procurement. But the reason we went down that path is we were concerned that the seed program wasn't providing enough kind of focused attention on what we were interested in. But we think this other process does. It may be something we want to consider. If we want.
Being site-specific, that the seed program did do us much good. And we need to talk to our local utility provider. I mean, if you're looking at just the electrical costs and the operations, it's at $810,000. If we decided to switch to something, it's gonna have major impacts.
Right.
And let's look locally first, and then see what our other community members are doing, and then feed off of that.
And the consultant we hired is helping us do exactly what you just described. And they've got experience in the solar industry, and they have experience working with utilities, and so. I'm not saying we have to do that. I'm saying that's what we're doing where I work, and so far it's a much better field than the seed program was. So.
Don't you start with the utility provider first? To
That's
see
one.
the impacts and how, as far as getting some more background information to make some judgments on it?
Yeah, so, I mean, and I know Blake's been through this at ESD, but he probably has more direct knowledge. I'm kind of learning it as we go along, and he's done it already.
Yeah, I mean, the next steps could be either way. It probably would not be a bad idea to reach out to the Truckee Donner PUD and see if they're interested in, certainly meeting with staff, and then possibly a board presentation that could influence, our decision to either do solar or the magnitude of a solar project, based on the impacts it could have on their utility. So I think that's probably not a bad first step, as opposed to engaging a consultant and possibly investing time and money on a path that then we change once we engage with the local utility.
The direction moving forward was I anticipated on contacting, there is Nathan, there's someone in the town I was going to contact to see what options for solar panels there. I have some direct contact with some manufacturers as well. Reach out for some other people who've had projects, and also going to get a summary of how we can proceed in what fashion and what that kind of encompasses, and report that back to the board.
Well, there's also some efficiency coefficients in this, that this industry is going like the start of computers to where they are now. It's going to be in hyperspeed. So in the next couple of years, it's going to change dramatically, which may lower the cost.
And those are the things to determine.
Yeah.
But I think what Blake was suggesting is potentially a step prior to what you were just describing, which is some initial investigation and fact-finding
Yeah.
of Truckee Donner PUD.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so maybe you could,
I think Blake suggested it.
report back.
Just give us a call.
Because we have I think the scope of our project is anything from a small solar array that, you know, produces a nominal amount to, you know, a very, very large system that could potentially offset the full $810,000 a year. And it's probably good to talk to the PUD, and, you know, and I forget whether it was in this group or another one where it was discussed that, you know, the net metering that the utilities provide only goes up to like a 1 megawatt size, so it's good to get, and PUD would know that, because it doesn't make sense to build it to offset all of this if the net metering doesn't work beyond, you know, offsetting, say, 100, you know, a quarter of our electricity production, because guess what? They're not gonna, it's not gonna work that way, and they're just gonna pay us some nominal amount for the electricity we put into the grid, so. So it would be good to, talk, and if it's interesting enough, you know, and you wanna bring them back here to us, you know, to help us decision, I think that'd be good.
Okay, so we've terminated that, and let's go on to management team updates, department reports.
Good morning, President Lewis, Board of Directors. Operations report for July. All plant waste discharge requirements were met for the month. The Operations Department collaborated with the Engineering Department to facilitate several of the plant improvement projects that we have going right now. We completed the additional sampling for lab testing for the wastewater characterization for the master plan. Overall, the plant performed well for the month. Laboratory staff report. Staff performed necessary laboratory testing per WDR requirements, operational needs. And they also helped us complete the additional lab testing for the wastewater characterization for the master plan. And you can see the plant data. The average monthly flow was 4.57. The maximum instantaneous flow was 8.57. And the maximum 7-day average was 5.53. Suspended solids, well within our ranges, 1.7 with a limit of 10. WDR report, daily reported was 1.9 with a limit of 20. Turbidity 3.1 with a max of 10. Total phosphorus 0.39 with a max of 0.8 and 0.49 with a max of 1.5. And then COD was 39.8 with our limit being 45. And on the upper max is we had a 46 average and the max is 60. So based on that, that's all I have. Is there any questions?
Just curious, Mike, on the additional lab sampling for the wastewater characterization. I mean, were you guys, I know you've handed that off probably to Carollo to look at for the master plan today, but did you see, has our waste influent wastewater characterization changed dramatically from kind of the design criteria that we've used in the past? You know, water conservation devices and other things, or is it still kind of pretty much the same as it's always been?
So, I mean, I think overall we've seen a decrease in overall net flow with small increases in concentration.
Okay.
I don't think we went back a few years. I don't think we've seen anything that's significant as far as increase in loading. This characterization was really more for the BioWind system, which is going to be a system that we put all this information in and we can plug numbers into, and it can kind of predetermine taking processes in and out of service and what the impact will be, anticipated loadings, what that impact could be to the plant, what we need to put in service to facilitate those loadings. So this increased, or these extra samples were kind of to help build that system.
I just know that, you know, there's a lot of talk in the industry about, you know, the impact of climate change, water conservation, and treatment plants, and the collection systems changing with water conservation and all this stuff. And I just wondered, since you were doing that, whether there was, it sounds like, yeah, a minor increase in expected reduced flows, higher concentration of stuff, but not materially different than in the past. Thanks.
Anybody else?
Probably a year and a half ago, we were kind of right on the borderline with our pH reading at one of our wells, and that seems like that's become less of an issue.
Yeah, so the limitation out of well 31 is a 6.5, and for instance, last month was a 6.6. So we're still, we're not well above it, but we're not dipping below that 6.5. And we are contributing, it could have several different contributing factors, but we have not been putting ammonia out to the fields, and we were getting that partial nitrification. We're getting nitrification, but not denitrification. And we thought that that may have been contributing to the lowered pH that we're getting at well 31. We haven't seen it dip down below that in, I think, a little bit over a year since it's gone down below the 6.5. We'll get 6.8s, 6.7s, 6.6s out of there. So and it is a monthly average.
But
The bugs will help you.
I guess. Yeah, I know that was something you were working on and not exactly sure what the fix was, but it sounds like
Yeah.
you either got lucky or you made some changes that.
And of course, something could happen this winter, and
Yeah.
you know, we don't change anything, we could still dip below that 6.5. So
Right.
hopefully we won't.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Richard?
Morning, President Lewis, Board of Directors, Richard Palante, Maintenance Manager. So this month of July, we saw 41 dig alerts along the TRI corridor for the construction season. As operations, we assisted in a couple projects that engineering has going, the concrete repair project, hopped into some of the tanks and helped out there. As with the Headworks Bar Stream Compactor upgrade project for the walkthrough with the engineering staff that's going to be doing the design. Completed all of our scheduled PM work orders for the month of July, and we continue to hold about the same backlog of work for correctives through July. We wrapped up some projects in July, the RAS VFD, so we replaced 3 outdated, obsolete VFDs with 3 new updated units. We've completed the nitrification blower installation. That's a project where we're changing out an existing manufacturer that has had a high failure rate with a different manufacturer, so we'll see how we progress there. Lucity, we've been sticking in some test data and running some workflow testing through there, and we have a tour scheduled for another facility, another plant in Victorville that operates with Lucity. And then we'll be reaching out to our member agencies that use Lucity and visiting them well, just to see how they've structured their system. Continue on the Camus boiler installation. Compiled our second phase of surplus items for auction. And then we've been working with operations to do some instrumentation upgrades, new turbidity meter for the filter influent, and then some new additional dissolved oxygen oxygenation basins.
Go ahead, Doug.
Two quick questions. Your work orders by group, I see a mechanical, I&E, and then facilities.
Mm-hmm.
Just in the org chart, what is the facilities that distinguishes it from mechanical and I&E?
So facilities is anything, we kind of break it down as the building related. So if there's something in the administration area, those work orders go to that work group. They're primarily the ones doing any kind of cleaning, facility-based repairs and preventative maintenance, HVAC, PMs would go to the facilities group. And then the mechanical would take on anything that's more process related.
With your surplus items staged for auction, how do you dispose of those surplus items? Is that Craigslist or?
We're using Gov Deals.
Okay.
We set up with them, and I work with Rochelle and admin. We package it up, and then now I understand they have additional staff online, so they upload our pictures, our descriptions, and then they'll auction them.
Big pieces, are these vehicles or are they?
The first phase was mostly old office furniture. This phase is a bunch of old electric motors.
Is it all done as a lot, or is it piece by piece?
We're doing some lots.
Okay.
We sold an old Snowcat that operations had. We did that one individually, but the other stuff we've tried to put into bite-sized lots that make it manageable for us, yet still attractive for someone that might want to buy it.
Okay.
We do have a policy on how we're going to remove those with certain items that are estimated to be a certain value to come to the board for approval. And if anything doesn't sell through that, I think we had one where the desks didn't go through.
Yeah.
We offer at that point, once we've gone through that purpose, before throwing it away, just offering up to staff.
Okay.
And then whatever isn't taken, we will dispose of it accordingly.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Richard. Jay?
Hello again. Engineering report. The month of July, we worked on a number of projects. Plant concrete repair project, roof repair project. We're prepping for work to start soon on that. Headworks improvements project. We met with the consultant, conducted a workshop, walked the site, about them oriented. Admin building office remodel project. That's due to start up in about a week from now. Digital scanning of sewer lines is coming up this fall for the next phase of digital scanning. The multi-use digester pump is actually, I should retitle that, it's digester cleaning project. That's this October. We're assisting in developing plans for the ops department and performing that work. Master sewer plan, we had some coordination with them, the sampling that Michael recommended or discussed. And then for project planning, up through the first half of July, we worked on the hotel at Avery. The Truckee River Bridge Fanning Bridge project, that's the telemetry. They aren't finished with that job yet. That's ongoing. So we had some coordination items on that. And then finally the Truckee River siphon replacement project. We've been reviewing some submittals. We had a meeting with SVPSD staff and their consultant. We went to the project site a couple weeks ago to look at how things are going, and then we have staff out there today to witness the pipe pulling. That's quite a project. Good job on
It's happening.
Yeah, it's happening. It's going well. That's all I have, unless there was other questions.
When does the roof repair, when do they be on site?
I'm sorry,
when the roof repair, when the contractor comes on site for the...
So we have a contract form that we need to execute that I believe River will be meeting with you later about. Once we have that, then it's quick submittals. We already have the submittals, but we're not yet sending them back until we get the contract signed. And then we would anticipate probably the next couple of weeks of coming out and then finishing the first part by October 4th. The wrinkle here is that the contract, the original time frame for the contract was August 5th to October 4th. Right. And they waited until October 7th or 8th to land the contract on our desk. They had some revisions to the contract form that they wanted to make. We consulted with legal. We met amongst ourselves, decided that those revisions were acceptable. One of them had to do with warranty, some provisions that they wanted to alter on the warranty, provisions that they wanted to alter on the indemnification. Both of those were deemed acceptable by both the attorney, our legal counsel, and our staff. But the third item was on schedule. They had written to be determined with respect to contract performance. Because they waited so long to do the contract forms, and we have to get through the submittal process, we're now at a point in which we can't move the October 5th deadline or 4th deadline because of climatic concerns, both temperature and inclement weather. So the idea is that we would have the roofer come in and tackle our most critical area, which is building 1353, and complete that by October 4th. And then by change order, extend the work for the other buildings until next spring. They've agreed to do that on a no cost change.
Okay, good.
So that'd be the path forward.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Any other questions? Okay, Bob.
Good morning, members of the board. Bob Gray, IT manager. The IT department has been keeping up with the requests of the other departments satisfactorily. Besides the normal day-to-day operations, we've been involved in the following collaborative projects. The security cameras on top of the BNR pump station, which gives us a bird's eye view of the ballast ponds and all of CNCT. Is being replaced as we speak and should be finished by the end of the week. The camera that's to replace the one up on top of AWT is on order and should be installed by the end of the month. These are pretty special cameras, which gives us nighttime view of up to 800 meters, so it's just kind of a bigger project there. And as Richard mentioned, the RAS pumps have been, that project has been complete, and all the monitoring data points are now being brought into SCADA and logged. We are also actively programming the PIS system to incorporate the operations data entry system, which has been in place for the past 15 years, and it needs to be upgraded and integrated into our systems. And besides that, I feel everything in our technically has been running pretty smoothly. So.
Good job. Dave?
Bob, as far as these security cameras,
Yeah.
Are we contracting with a company or are we buying these cameras?
We are buying these cameras.
Okay, so in order to keep up with technology, we have to keep updating these cameras. Are these things expensive or?
Well, the ones that we just bought, I mean, the capabilities of the cameras we have now are probably, I would say, 5 times the capabilities of our previous cameras, which were initially installed probably about 8 years ago, and we're talking half the price for. So these cameras were $2,500, and the ones before, when we originally bought them through, that actually went to a consulting company. They were around for $5,000 a piece.
Okay, and how many cameras do we have located?
Altogether, I'm going to say about 8 or 9.
Okay.
And the ones we are replacing now are the ones that have either failed or they're failing, and we do want to replace them with ones with much better clarity and features on them. So.
These cameras, I feel, are very, very important in. You say we got 7 cameras right now on the facility?
I would say about 8 or 9.
8 or 9?
Yeah.
At $5,000 a piece?
No. Previously, what we bought them for, yes. But now, and we're buying the cameras, and depending, like for the one up on top of 71, that was about $1,500. So $2,500 is pretty much the max we're going to spend.
Okay, so the cost is coming down.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll be able to increase our coverage as far as for surveillance in a more detailed manner as the prices come down, or do you think we've got things covered?
I think we have things covered right now, but if in the future we feel that we need some more cameras or whatever, I mean, the cost should be insignificant.
Okay.
There actually is a budget item in the budget to increase the security system, so there will be an increased coverage.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Bob.
Okay.
Michelle?
Okay, gentlemen. So our accounting department was busy this past month and previous working on the budgets, and as well as preparing for our audit. Our auditors will be in-house the end of September, so we've been coordinating back and forth with them, providing information prior to their arrival. Other than that, let's see, the billing department finalized all of the delinquencies that we sent to the county tax roll, as well as our regular service charges that were previously approved. So those have all been submitted and confirmed, and I didn't report those final values to you, but we have completed that process. Their next project is to start working on conversion of all the commercial buildings based on our new ordinance and working on those details. We've also increased the number of inspections. I don't have a report for you on that besides the number that were performed this month, but in previous years it was, looking back at history, there was anywhere between 20 and 40 inspections per year. And if you look now, you can see there were 20 actual physical and I think 8 drive-bys, so a total of 28 inspections just this month alone, when that used to be an annual average. So we are
stepping it up.
Very much stepping it up. So we have staff out a minimum of 3 days. So taking care of that to get us where we need to be. Purchasing has been maintaining purchase orders and assisting with contracts. Both Tiffany and I think I reported this last month, Tiffany and I both temporarily relocated to different offices during the admin remodel. So Tiffany is in the accounting department and I am in billing, if you happen to come by and look for us. And then myself, as well as all the other departments, have continued with Cassell for this setup implementation. They are finalizing that process now so we can start our pre-live section of implementation, where staff and I will actually in October travel to Utah for our training. It will only be 3 of us, myself and the other 2 department supervisors, and then we'll do a lot of online training and in-house as well. So that's moving smoothly. And other than that, and providing general administration for appeal hearings and setup, that's been the majority of our time.
All right, thank you. Blake?
I really appreciate the connection fee table you're providing. I have a question on the, you have a line for commercial connection fees, and for July month to date, there were 5 commercial. What do those units represent? Is that a project? Is that an EDU equivalent?
Sometimes they're TIs, or based on these increased inspections, we go to a location and find they have additional outside seats or inside seats.
So if you had one large, a hospital that went in,
right,
that connected, would that just represent a value of 1?
Correct.
So really you need to look at the dollar sign to kind of back out the magnitude of the commercial development that's going on. The number could be anything from 1, floor drain is a 1, and a whole hospital would be 1, but the dollars.
The month to date represents difference.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Michelle. Okay. All right, let's go on to board of directors' comments.
GM report.
Or GM report.
Yes, I really have nothing major to add in addition to what I've written.
Okay. Board comments, Dr. Tresson?
Nothing this time.
Dr. Cox?
None.
Dr. Northrup? None. Dr. Wilkins? Me neither. Okay, let's go, at this point, let's go into the closed session. Thank you, staff. Great job. Keep up the good work.